This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My guest this hour is Acharya S., and we're going to be talking about Acharya's new calendar. It's the 2012 Astrotheology calendar that serves as a basic introduction into the world of archaeoastronomy, solar mythology, and astrotheology. As has been the case in our past astrotheology calendars, in addition to showing lunar phases and festivals and astrological signs, this year's calendar highlights the solstices, equinoxes, and fire festivals with a different color for each of the 8 relevant days. Also, as in the past, in our quest to inspire an interest in astrotheology, mythology, and archaeoastronomy, we have provided fascinating information about the astronomical alignments and the astrotheological meanings of various archaeological sites and ancient artifacts from around the world. Joining me now is the one and only Acharya S. Hey, how are you?
Hey there. It's nice to talk to you again.
Great having you with us again, Acharya. Congratulations on your calendar. And you know, there's calendars all over the place. What was your inspiration for this calendar?
You know, we talk about heady issues about religion, and a lot of times we talk about the bad aspects of it, and we talk about what it isn't and how it's fallen short. And so we spent quite a few years speaking about and where it's mythological and not historical and so forth. And the other side of that coin is what religious ideas or mythological or spiritual concepts have inspired humanity in a positive manner, in a manner to produce beautiful culture and artifacts. And so these calendars that I've been making for the last 3 years are really a very striking visual. Somebody outside.
Somebody's stealing a car.
A really striking visual experience of the meaning behind the myths. And I wanted to share that sort of artistic expression instead of the usual scholarly highbrow stuff that I do, which is, it's very difficult. I also have a new DVD out for that reason, which has all kinds of footage of me talking. It's another imagery, but that's, it's with the image, the striking imagery. Because the calendars show our religious heritage dating back thousands of years and how it actually affects us today and our current religious traditions.
December 21st, 2012, everybody's talking about it. There are those who think it's going to be the dawning of the new age of spirituality. The others think the new galactic alignment is going to throw everything on a tilt, so that negative is going to be positive, positive is going to be negative, north is going to be south, south is going to be north. Then there are those who believe that it's the end of the world, the beginning of the book of Revelations, the apocalypse. What do you think?
Wow, you just have that pattern down well.
Not bad, eh?
Yeah, you're good.
I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a chance to think about that. We're going to take a 2-minute commercial break.
All right.
When we come back, more with Acharya S. We're talking about her 2012 Astrotheology calendar this hour and much more. Her website is www.truthbeknown.com. And Acharya S. and I return on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break. As the X Zone continues, we're right here live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
This is Johanna Carroll, host of Dialogue with Divinity on the X Zone Broadcast Network. While walking along Kaanapali Beach in Maui this past year, I kept discovering all these shells and coral in the shape of hearts. My dialogue with divinity was very simple. Do you want me to do a retreat to heal people's hearts in Maui next year? And of course, the answer was yes. As a master spiritual teacher, I am offering you a neat retreat called Rise, May 8th through the 12th, 2017, and the chance of a lifetime to rest at a 5-star resort for 5 days and experience a spiritual renewal of your heart and soul. Kaanapali is one of the top 5 beaches in the world. This stunning resort has undergone a $40 million renovation. I walked the entire property, checked out the room choices on your behalf, and I must say it is stunning. Our conference room faces the ocean with sliding glass doors. Maui is known as Mother Maui because it is a soft, gentle, healing energy. In the embrace of Mother Maui, you will feel yourself rising from the limitations of an ordinary life to an extraordinary journey of peace, bliss, and harmony, a greater sense of clarity. Our Rise retreat ignites renewal in the sacred elements of air, water, earth, fire, and wind. There's plenty of free time to enjoy all that Maui has to offer. A small deposit is required now to reserve your space, as this retreat, it will sell out. For more details, please go to johannacarroll.com and register today. Aloha, and I'll see you in mystical Maui.
Acharya S. our special guest. We're talking about her 2012 Astrotheology calendar. And before we went to the commercial break, I asked you a very simple question, all about December the 21st, 2012. So tell me, what does Acharya S. think is going to happen on that marked day?
Well, it's going to be world-ending global cataclysm. Isn't that what everybody wants to hear?
Well, yeah, you've got everybody clapping, but now tell the truth.
I'm afraid our end is going to come much slower than that. But, see, in this particular calendar, I do quote one of the world's leading Mayanists who has been dunned with that question for years now. Obviously, it's a professor who has essentially refuted it. He said there's really no text that says what the sensationalist movie studios and all the rest, the New Age or kind of end of the world trumpeters are proclaiming. It'd be something like the year 2000, which I think we also were talking on the radio back then with Y2K, but it's been that long.
Yeah.
But no worries made in that regard. The calendar has a particular cycle that ends. I'm not an expert on the Maya calendar, which is extremely complicated. But what that date really, and even the December 21st date is sort of contrived. I believe it's traceable to the 80s, maybe with Jose Arguelles or something. I know it's apparently a really fairly modern date as far as the actual day goes.
Mm-hmm.
But the year is really just the end of a cycle, and the Maya clearly expected things to change at ends of cycles. They had this very, very complicated system whereby their mythology essentially would change at that point. And whether or not we choose to take, and by mythology I mean what they thought was religion. They took this very seriously, and it inspired them to do certain things. So cycles definitely have an effect on us in that they inspire us to do things or act in a certain way or set up our culture in a particular manner, but that it's not something that you can actually read into and say we're going to have earthquakes and pole shifts and tsunamis and so forth and so on that day. In fact, I'm supposed to be at the site of Chichen Itza in the Yucatan on that day, giving a talk.
What's your talk on?
Well, my talk would be a new future, 2012,
right.
a new beginning is what it would be. Because I would tie it into something like I've got going on with the calendars that I've created, which I was describing. These visual, very beautiful imagery that I've included in here, and I have text describing the artifacts, either artifacts or sites or celestial phenomena like nebula,
mm-hmm.
and what humans have done with these archaeologically or astronomically aligned sites, the sacred sites, citing them on the movements of the planets and the stars and the sun, the moon, and so forth. And this expression of really science, astronomical science, dating back thousands of years, it reveals such a deep and profound human spirit. It's very inspiring. It's the kind of thing that we want to hear. That's the flip side of end of the world talk. What has humanity created? I love looking at this stuff. I'm talking about ancient artifacts. These sites, not even necessarily that old, that are very extraordinarily creative, very artistic, very beautifully set, and sometimes like Machu Picchu on the side of a mountain, just incredibly dramatic. These wonderful human accomplishments, I like to point to those as well as pointing out the folly of humanity so that it can be changed. But so what I would try to tell people, first of all, the good news is that with all this global communication we've got going on,
right,
we're finding correspondences everywhere. We've got lots of differences to iron out, but we're finding correspondences everywhere. And there actually are correspondences in religions. There are some very profound differences between religions, and I've talked about them repeatedly for a long time. But I like to focus on I also talk about the comparisons,
mm-hmm.
because that's part of comparative religion. That's actually what gets me in trouble the most. Because I would say something like, the religions that were followed in Mesoamerica had some incredibly striking similarities to old world religions, especially Judaism and Christianity. And so when the Europeans started coming over here after Columbus, and there was this onslaught, then they just started discovering all of these similarities
mm-hmm.
between their religions and Christianity and Judaism. And they were so completely freaked out by it. So instead of trying to figure out why they had the similarities, or they did come up with some excuses, like either Jesus teleported himself here from the Middle East, or St. Thomas flew on the back of an eagle to land in Central America. And I'm not kidding. These are the things that they came up
Sure.
with to explain these correspondences. Yeah.
So, we know for a fact history has lied. We know that science lies. We know that everything that we're told is wrong. So, what is the truth about archaeology? What is the truth about the past as we can prove, Acharya? We know that Columbus didn't discover the Americas. We know the Vikings and the Irish were here way before him. We know that the Egyptians were trading with North America. So what do we do to change all this?
Well, this is a part of what I'm doing now with this kind of work, of dealing with what we do know.
Mm-hmm.
For example, right now, I'm looking at these incredibly beautiful sites. For example, I've got the Angkor Wat in Cambodia in this year's calendar. I've got Persepolis in Iran. And I try to take a sampling from all over the world to show these commonalities. And how they're inspiring modern expressions of them as well. And December, I end with this new Earth clock in Burlington, Vermont. That is just so cool. It measures all of this knowledge, and this knowledge is always perpetually on the edge of being lost. And that's what you're talking about, because we've lost so much of it, and that loss has allowed for the pathologies to arise that are dividing us up. We've got this tree of knowledge that has all kinds of dead, pathologically, infested branches at the end that need to be pruned down. And I'm out here pruning the tree, and the tree starts to scream a little bit now and again. People don't like to hear that their pathologies are pathological, but so when you go back to these roots, this is the good news. That what is it all about? It's all about our natural world. It's about what we can see around us. It's about revering the creation and not destroying it. And we're so close to destroying the creation on this planet. It's just the bad news is everywhere.
Yeah.
And so and as far as the particular old world, new world contact goes, of course, the mainstream science will argue that the only contact that has been really solidly proved was in the Vikings in Newfoundland. But here's where I am working on right now, because I'm revising my Christ Conspiracy book.
Yes.
That's quite a chore. After it was published in 1999, and there's been just tons of material that's come out to validate almost every major point and many minor details in there as well. I'm trying to figure out humanity supposedly coming out of Africa and then making its way up through, this is what the modern, the most recent theory of the genetic Eve is, making its way up through the Middle East and then over into Europe and over to the east into the Asia and then across the Bering Strait down into America. And that's really what the mainstream is telling us and so forth. And then you see all these other DNA studies on the DNA has been going back and forth on the genetics of Native Americans, and it's really confused. And so I'm trying to sift through it all, because they're talking 4 migrations, 9 migrations, 1 migration.
Yeah.
The one migration is the dominant theory. They're saying that the anomalies that show Polynesian genetics, that show Japanese genetics, that these are all being tossed out because they don't fit the paradigm.
Yeah, if it doesn't fit, you toss it. You call it false.
And that's exactly what you've been talking about with so many of your guests. You've been examining the anomalies that are being tossed away.
Exactly.
That's a way to put it, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's a very polite way of putting it, I might add.
I feel like an anomaly that's been tossed away. Anyway.
Not you, my dear. Not you. You're a shining light in a sea of deceit.
Oh, thank you so kindly. I like to just dig down and get down to the basics and see what humanity's been doing and project myself into the picture and say, how are they getting so inspired by this? But again, with this whole thing about the Yucatan and the Maya and the religions being so similar to the old world religions and so forth. See, this is where I have a problem with that isolationist perspective. I have a very dear friend who's a major isolationist archaeologist at American University. And, I see his point where he's talking about, hey, the solid evidence is they haven't really found this, they haven't really found that. That's fun, but with my studies, the details of similarities between how similar the details are between all of these religions, that to me is evidence of ongoing contact at least a couple times over a period of thousands of years. There's something to it. It's so detailed.
Stand by, Acharya. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Acharya S. is our special guest, truthbeknown.com. My name is Rob McConnell. This is The X Zone. We'll be back on the other side of the news. Don't go away.
This This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. And welcome back, everyone. Acharya S. is our special guest this hour. We're talking about Acharya's new calendar, the 2012 Astrotheology calendar. Her website is www.truthbeknown.com. And maybe for our listeners, could you describe what astrotheology is?
I certainly can. With great pleasure.
Geez, I hope you can.
Well, we've already been talking about it. We're talking about sacred sites having astronomical alignments, archaeoastronomically aligned, which means in antiquity or prior to the modern era, people built these sites and they aligned certain axes of it, corners of if it's a building or sites citing stones to the winter solstice, the summer solstice, the phases of the moon, and a wide variety of different celestial landmarks. And for purposes of not just worship, but worship as well as having this knowledge encapsulated. This is very important knowledge to humanity. We could not really progress without it. The knowledge of these planetary movements will tell us when we should be planting and harvesting. That's just a major thing. And people talk about, raise that one particular aspect up. It'll tell us when, for example, the Nile is going to flood. And that was crucial to the development of Egypt. And the Egyptian religion is highly astrotheological. Their gods were largely revolving around nature. You know, we know about the gods of the Egyptians with crocodile heads and jackal heads and so forth, and cat. And we know that they're extremely focused on the nature around them. India had the same sort of divination or deification, rather, of the natural world as well. And these are some of the oldest cultures, so it's quite natural for humanity to do that. And part of this nature worship has been the observations of the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, constellations, meteors, comets, and so forth, and taking the knowledge about these planetary bodies and encapsulating them into stories to pass along the information from generation to generation. They also would encapsulate this knowledge in their architecture, other artifacts. We've got discs and zodiacs and so forth. That just endless amount of this wonderful stuff from around the world. And I'm trying to point towards that. Okay, let's not worry about whether or not this myth or that myth actually happened in history, because most of them didn't. You know, that's why they're called myths. But things like virgin births actually happening to people of a particular ethnicity 2,000 years ago, all this stuff that is very ethnically biased and focused on. There's one guy, he represents God, or this other guy, he represents God, and when in fact you figure out that these stories they're telling about these particular superhuman saviors and godmen, they're actually very old, they're archetypical, and they have to do with nature worship. And so this takes us out of our myopic, culturally biased little world and tosses us back into where we were 10,000 years ago, which is if you weren't a keen observer of nature 10,000 years ago, you wouldn't survive.
Right.
You needed somebody who knew what was happening with the natural world. And human beings are not that stupid that they couldn't have actually sat and had these scientific observations, and we know that they did.
Well, of course, they didn't have Xbox, they didn't have Netflix, they didn't have computers, they didn't have all these little electronic gizmos that we have today that take us away from nature.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And they're sitting on mountains. I like to just project myself back in time sometimes, like to the site called Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, for example. It's 11,500 years old. Who knew, huh? I mean, some of us crackpot anomalies over here have known about this, the antiquity of human culture for a long time, but we've been told by the mainstream repeatedly. Well, first it was the bibliolaters, saying that the Bible records the creation of the world in 4004 BC. So first we had that nonsense. Then we had the nonsense that was almost biblical from the archaeologists telling us that, there's nothing earlier than, first it was, of course, the Egyptians, and then it was the Sumerians. Mm-hmm. And then now we're finding out, even in Jericho, there's older civilization, and Chateau Hayek in Turkey. Now there's this Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. It's 11,500 years old. And it's this magnificent site that shows a serious advanced culture at that time. And so, like I said, we people who've been looking at this fringe research have known about these implications. And because some of this stuff is traceable through the myths, some of these myths have to be very, very, very old. And so they just pop up, 3,000 years ago.
I often look at the older religions. No, let's be honest. I look at all religions as nothing else but a form of an almanac.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
The cultural artifacts.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not something, I'm not interested in banning all religion. People think that because I critique religion and its pathologies that have allowed for people to kill hundreds of millions of people and do all these horrible things, that I want to ban religion across the board. And I'm saying, no, look at what religion has inspired.
That's right.
Now, granted, if you look at, and I'm not saying to believe in it, because if you look at something like, for example, the Mayan culture, the Mesoamericans, they were pretty brutal.
They sure were.
So they're creating these magnificent edifices, and yet then they're cutting people's hearts out and throwing their bodies down the sides of these buildings. So,
and we also have to remember, Acharya, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that these books, these theological books, these theological philosophical books were written by people who did not have a grasp on what we know today. If the events of the Bible were to happen today and witnessed by the masses, how would the Bible be written, or would it be written at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a huge debate whether or not an omniscient God could possibly have written such a thing and left out so much and included what debunkers are contending are serious errors in science and so forth. If you go and study, I've been studying religion since I was a child because I was very fascinated by the Greek myths as a young person. Before I could even read, I would like to look at the pictures and sometimes color comic books and so forth. But if you look at from that perspective, I was also exposed to National Geographic. I love telling this because it really had a huge effect on my psyche.
Yeah.
I looked at cultures from all around the world. I was very anthropologically minded in the sense that I could look at them dispassionately from the outside and not be involved, and that applies specifically to religious brainwashing, for example. And so that allowed me also to look at these cultures from around the world, seeing what they had in common, and also, but not adhering to them one or the other, and saying, well, I believe over here, and therefore I'm not like you over there, and I'm actually better than you, and you're evil and doomed, and you're unsaved, and all that other bigoted rubbish that we hear. I never had that experience where I was so arrogant and conceited looking at people. I have the right belief system, I'm better than you. And so I was able to look at these different cultures without a judgment as to their morality and see what they had created. For example, the Greek culture, which I spent a lot of time studying. I lived in Greece, speak the language, read the language on a regular basis, absolutely love it. And I could look at the Parthenon and the Acropolis in Greece, and with great wonder, just amazed, and not thinking, oh, these people were heathens and they weren't Christians like me, and I didn't have any of that judgment. And so when I would go visit these sites in Greece, talk about a high, I would just be ecstatic. I was like, this is so exciting. These are the things, the reasons, the raison d'être, my moment to be alive, or I live for these moments. And so that kind of mentality, if we could develop that mentality and not saying we have the only truth and now we're going to go around and destroy all the sacred sites on the planet and our own past, which has been happening abundantly. Here I'm trying to show people with these calendars that look at these sites, look at these artifacts. They're amazing what humanity has created. Look at the commonalities between cultures here. It can't get any better than that. I give descriptions, and also the science that they are recording is so important to emphasize. We've got, for example, speaking of the Mesoamerican situation, and in the August picture, I have the Pyramid of the Sun in my 2012 calendar. The Pyramid of the Sun and the Avenue of the Dead in Teotihuacan, Mexico. Everybody knows this site. It's a famous Aztec site. It's like proto-Aztec almost in some ways. It's been built over several times, but it's aligned. It has many astronomical alignments. The Pyramid of the Sun itself is aligned to cross-quarter days, and its face is oriented to the sunset on August 13th, which is an interesting date. Doesn't really follow with the typical solstices and equinoxes and so forth. And so now we look at why is there a difference like that? Why do they? Well, the Maya live not so far from the equator, and so the solstices weren't all that important to them. Because they didn't have this dramatic daytime-nighttime shift going on throughout the year. The solstice, of course, is really important to people living in the northern hemisphere, and the winter solstice, where it's really cold. And then, of course, the opposite happens in the southern hemisphere. But let's say December 25th. This was a amazing time for people because the sun had been disappearing from the sky, and the days were getting shorter, and the nights were getting longer, and it's a time of death and cold and depression. There's this seasonal affective disorder, for example, in Scandinavian countries. And so when it makes this turnaround at the solstice and the days start getting longer, it's a time of tremendous rejoicing. They know that life is going to be renewed. Just the heat of the sun alone is enough to bring up their mood. And then, obviously, now we know about vitamin D and all the other things that are accompanying sunlight. But the Maya were not so focused on that, and they were more interested in the equinoxes, for example, or Mesoamerican cultures, not just the Maya. And we look at the reasons for these things, and this is where our cultural differences come in, and they don't have to be differences. They may become something like that would become dogma. In my religion, August 13th is very important.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they start fighting over it instead of realizing why it was important in your religion. And it has to do with the particular alignment or some observation. That was actually the day of Maya origins. And I don't know exactly why they chose that day, but so you can say, okay, sure, the date of Maya origins is August 15th. There's no reason to hate that date then if you're a non-believer. That's a silly thing. Well, we don't want to follow your holy days because... And the same thing with, let's say, Judaism and Islam. They're very lunar-oriented. Their traditions have a lot to do with the moon and the phases and so forth. And that's quite contrary to more solar religions. And so now we see the fight between the night and the night sky people or the day sky people, and that's been a big battle throughout history. People who travel at night in desert regions have different religious beliefs because of their environment. Harsher, brutal, cruel. It's a very rough life. People live in the islands of South Pacific have had very easy life, traditionally speaking, until, of course, missionaries ran them.
Of course, leave it to a Westerner to screw things up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some places they made it better, and some places they made it worse. As far as the Polynesian islands go, they didn't need the introduction of rats and diseases and clothing.
Well, just like the North American natives didn't need 30 million of them wiped out when we came over and brought all this disease with us, and we're the good guys.
Yeah. Well, it's a give and take there, because you have the conquistadors coming here and with their missionaries and proclaiming these devil worshippers with good reason, when they're seeing thousands of people having their hearts cut out and being
it was called population control back then.
Well, there's so many reasons for that. I think what happens there with the human sacrifice, which has been practiced all over the world, and that's actually what we're seeing in the New Testament gospel story, is a sacred king human sacrifice scapegoat ritual. That's a mouthful. Is that I think what happened possibly is thousands of years ago, we had these tremendous floods at the end of
my friend, I hate to do this to you, but we've got to take a break. When we come back, let's pick it up at the floods.
All right.
My good friend Acharya S. is on the show with us this hour, X Zone Nation, truthbeknown.com. She has her brand new 2012 Astrotheology calendar available. Go to her website, check it out, truthbeknown.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't you dare go away.
I have a call back for 866 negative K, nothing further, just
In over 36 years in law enforcement, I've learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, extraterrestrials, and UFOs, how we gather that evidence of their existence, preserve that same evidence, and present it to a court of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Come with me on a journey that seeks to prove with undisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Join me, Larry Lawson, host of the Paranormal Stakeout, coming to the X Zone Broadcast Network. Check out the broadcast schedule for Paranormal Stakeout with yours truly, Larry Lawson, at www.xzbn.net. For more information about me, my travels, and my team, check out our website at www.paranormalfbi.com or join us on Facebook at Florida Bureau of Paranormal.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. And welcome back, everyone. My guest this hour, my good friend Acharya S. We've been talking about her 2012 Astrotheology calendar. Her website is www.truthbeknown.com. You know what? You and I started chatting during the commercial break, and you said that you're getting right into Bigfoot. Tell us a little bit. Why do you think Bigfoot is real?
You troublemaker. No, what I'm saying, I'm watching these shows that are on National Geographic and Discovery and History Channel, and I find the subject fascinating, and I find I'm so glad there's serious, hardcore scientists looking at it. I love these subjects. These are fun. They're, regardless of whether or not we believe in them, I think that I'm interested in exploring everything that humanity has been able to perceive.
Especially when we haven't fully explored our own planet, or what is it? We've explored less than 10% of the oceans?
Oh, yeah. Well, the oceans
heavens.
are full of incredible things. But we still have, even after all the clear-cutting and destruction of the planet, we still have these massive forests there. You don't want to get lost in them. So we're not sure everything's what's going on in there. And then there's still hundreds of species. Granted, most of them are very small, being, discovered every day. But, so there's our natural world that fascinates me, and then there's the man-made world that's fascinating me, and this is what I represent. Astrotheology represents both. It's the best of both.
One quick question for you. We've got about 2 minutes left. Yeah. Who was Jesus Christ?
Oh, gosh. Well, my research shows these commonalities that when you take characteristics of this gospel story, the commonalities resolve back to, again, astrotheology, nature worship. And we're looking at a solar hero there. We're looking at a typical sun, God-man, solar archetype that we find in the Americas as well, which is something I also discussed briefly in this particular calendar. I talk about Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl, or two Maya and Aztec names for a similar solar figure, and it just happens to have much in common with the Christ figure. And so when I see those things, and you can trace them all over the world, Mithraism and Egyptian religion, Indian religion, all these commonalities. And then they seem to go back even further and further. I keep tracing them back tens of thousands of years. And they start to show themselves, reveal themselves to us as observations of the natural world. And this is a unifying thing, too. This is what I'm trying to have people appreciate, the unity of our religious concepts dating back thousands of years. And where we had left off before, this story, in the gospel story of the sacred king being ritually sacrificed, it's pre-Christian. In fact, I think Christianity was an effort to end that practice, which was going on all over the place. Hey,
Acharya, you and I are going to have to get back together again and complete this conversation. It's always great talking to you, my dear friend. Take care of you. The very best of luck to you in everything you do. God knows you deserve it.
Oh, you too, sweetheart.
You take care now. Acharya S. has been my guest this hour, truthbeknown.com. I'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. But until then, always keep your eyes to